Hi, welcome back to Design for Equitable Systems. Today we're going to be talking about pitching and sharing your interventions. Now that you've gotten to the point where you have an amazing community-driven and centered intervention, you're going to want to need to share it with people who can help you and build out your work. And that's what we'll be giving you the tips and tricks to do that today. So the readings that you'll have are about pitching. It's not the perfect reading again, but we're working with what we have. And then we'll talk a little bit about movement building, and that's the first section. So what is a movement? How do we construct one, and why are they essential in kind of this day and age to doing social impact work? So a little review of testing with the community, which we talked about last week. Your evaluations of your intervention are critical for growth because people really want to know the qualitative and quantitative results of your study. But you must ensure that you're carefully designing them for equity, as most evaluations are very white and heteronormative in their construction. And so equitable evaluation was a concept that was brought in to ensure that equity is a part of your evaluations. So trying to understand, systemic oppression, trying to know the ways in which validity, and often kind of just not fun community-driven interventions. So you're trying to get to a more complex understanding of the word validity to ensure that more interventions and more communities can become funded. So to frame an evaluation, it's essential to look at these 3 points. You need to know, what do you want out of this test? You need to know what people in the community are looking for out of this test. And then you need to ensure that the test has been talked about and discussed with those that are going to be tested with to ensure that they're comfortable with this framework and understand the value of doing this test. So to prepare, making sure you have people in the room who are directly affected, and even some with indirect stakes, see how they respond or potentially want to support your work. Get up the space, get your tools, and have easy ways to give feedback. And then execute. So ensure that you're bringing people to a space that they feel comfortable in. You're listening to all the cues, observing what's going on. You can even record it if it's over something like Zoom. Prepare to modify and from your learnings. And remember, again, you're always testing. It's a growth moment. And it's essential that that's what your mindset is, a growth mindset. Nothing is a failure, but it's a way to learn and be better. And that's what we're going to get to today. We're going to start talking about movements to begin with. Now that we've evaluated our efforts, we're ready to grow them. And so growth is essentially, a matter of resources. Gaining the people that you need, gaining the funding that you need, the staffing that you need. And so to gain the people, we have to talk about this. So what brings people to movements? This is essential kind of core understanding when you're trying to recruit people to advance these efforts. People will join movements because they feel physically connected. So it's something in their backyard or something in their city, it's something in their school. They may be already connected to grassroots organizations. They might be part of churches, they might be part of community groups, they might be a part of, school clubs. All of them have a proximity to something that would then be connected intersectionally to the issue that you care about. Often people are brought to movements because of setting grievances. So big pollution is one, political corruption, all of these things that make people realize the systems are not working for me and I need to take an action. Most people might have a prior connection from activism or movement members, and that personal connection is essential to feeling like they have ties to the movement. There's an emotional tension, there's an emotional reaction to the issue and a willingness to want to address it. And people have the time and availability to act. And especially when you're working in underinvested communities, this can be one of your barriers, is that most people are working multiple jobs to get by, and often you will need to look for people that have the time or work around their schedules to ensure availability. So aiding mobilization. So what things, once you have people identified, what keeps them going and keeps them moving? Kind of the first two things are very connected. There's small groups within the movement of people that are tied together, feel connected, want to come, and they see familiar people in the movement that keep them coming. A really rapid communications network is also essential. When people don't hear from you, they might think, this is not going well, or nothing's going on, I can't help, and it makes them feel like it's not something they want to continue with. Mostly they'll have capable organizers. So you have people that are really good at putting things together, really good at communicating, really good at organizing, efforts, and they're essential. You have a mobilizing framework and alignment. Everyone understands the work that you're doing. Everyone understands the way that you're doing it, the steps, and are all together. And then you have optimistic expectations and consciousness management. So not only are people positive about change, they're ready to make that change, they're also aware of what needs to be done and are connected to the involvement of the issue. So now that you have some people, it's important to understand what is new power. So this was in one of the articles in discussing, the old ways versus the new ways. So with our new kind of more connected, more people-centered, more community-centered world that we're moving towards, we're starting to move away from these traditional ways of leader-driven, held by few, money-driven initiatives to ones that are made by many, current and updated, driven by, amount of seeing shares, and are very open to participation. And it's really cool to see that these things are what put people back in control of their lives. And for new power movements, there are a few essential things, but nothing is more important than the right people who can give things direction and are, the key for something taking off versus just fizzling out. So your steps, you need to find those connected connectors who will ensure organic growth. Those people out there that know others, that can give you validity and credibility and share out the intervention. You need to have a brand that's based on values of community and participation. It's a brand that sells, it's a brand that makes people excited to join the effort. You need to lower some barriers for participation and build on existing behaviors. If people are really social media driven, are always on their phones, always texting, what are the ways that you can make it really easy to join the effort and then very low barriers to just getting involved or sharing some articles or texting a politician about a community issue? And then you need to have some ways to move up the participation scale, which we'll show on the next slide. Not only can people do the easiest things, but they can realize that they have the power and the ability to do more and more and more. And that builds a leaderful effort. And this looks like, moving away from these ideas of just, volunteering and complying with the ways or consuming resources to, all the way up to shaping the movement. So you can share things, you can affiliate with the movement, become like an organizer. You can work to adapt the things to your own community. You can provide funding, you can produce content. There's so many ways that you can get involved, and helping people realize that starts to build a movement that moves beyond yourself to include so many amazing people who can make this a success. So I hope that is really inspiring. I'm going to move myself up so you can see the word. So now we're going to talk about how do I identify areas of support that I need. I might get the people in the room, an essential resource for this movement, but now I'm going to need some funding. I'm going to need some staffing. What questions should I be asking? And I answered my own question. So some questions to ask. And I kind of built these out into 3 areas so you can kind of see, 3 ways of support. And there's probably more than these, but these are just kind of the core ones. You're going to funding. What's the minimum amount of support? What's the minimum amount of funding that I will just get by with? And then start to imagine, what would be ideal? What money would I need to do, my pie in the sky goal that I have for this effort? Think about staffing. Most efforts might need different skill levels that you don't currently have. You might need website builders, graphic designers, lawyers, all those different skill sets. And so ensure that you know what you need to execute and also know what the skills are essential, especially if you're a new stage effort. And then finally, connections. How are you building this movement? Who are you talking to grow the effort? It kind of harkens back to our, coalition building conversation, but it is very much who are the people that will make this effort successful and how will I get in contact with them? And I think a key point here is be ambitious in what your intervention needs and know at the end of the day that you deserve the support. You worked really, really hard to get to this point, and you've done a lot of community-centered work, which is difficult, so you deserve all the support coming your way. So now that you've done that, you're ready to craft your pitch. Woo! And this is going to be, again, something that you'll be doing many, many times as you share out this work. So it's good to have, these few steps will help you to align your story, prepare for the people that you'll be pitching to, and do the best delivery possible. So the first thing you need to do is you need to know why people should invest. So you need to understand the value that your community-driven intervention brings. You need to show how you can scale the value brought and highlight, honestly, in our day and age, anti-racist practices of this effort and showing that this is a new way of doing things and it's a way that will ensure that we actually hear those who are directly faced by the problem. And it shows that people should invest in this because of that work. And then you're going to move on to knowing your audience you're pitching to and knowing that you need to have values alignment with that audience. Different supporters respond to different narratives. Some people are very empathetic. Some people are very numbers driven. Some people want really short pitches. Some people want the entire story. Know what you need to share in order to get kind of your point across to people that have different kind of frameworks through which they see the world. But you should never adapt your message or change your message to get a funder. And if you're changing your message, from its core, you might not be the right supporter you can get, and they might be more of an extractive force than a force that's investing in you and building out your work. Similar values then are essential, and it's just you're not selling out to something that will not actually support the work that you want to do. Then you're going to prepare your story. So you're going to want to do things, you want to balance your vision with your key details, have both stories and numbers to show the value that you bring, show how the community is directly impacted and uplifted, and always use visuals where applicable because pictures are essential, and if you have them, it'd be great to share what you're doing with the world. Highlight your team's strengths. Now you might think, I'm young, what credibility do I have? But know that you are leading a community-centered team, and that is the best one to carry out this intervention. And that is something that you should really highlight in your pitch. Show that you have commitment and passion, which are honestly sometimes more essential than, pedigrees and all that other stuff. And make sure that if you have those key decision makers on your side already, showcase them in your pitch. Be like, yeah, we got this politician, and they support our work, and they're great, and we're hot shit. So that might be a way to kind of show that you really are, a credible team that's going to be able to carry out this work. And end always with a clear ask. So you're building throughout your pitch. You're capturing the audience, showing them why it's important, and then showing them what they can do about it. And so you're building to this kind of final finale where you're saying this is what you can do moving forward. If you're asking for funding, for example, make sure you have a plan for spending that funding. You have clear points of this is the stuff we're going to be spending money on, this is what it's going to do, and this is how we're going to do, amazing work with it. And frame your ending, I think it's always good to think about next steps. If there are people in the audience who aren't, funders, but they can be connectors, be like, hey, this is a really cool effort, and you should get involved. Here are the easy steps to do so. Now it's less about the pitch, but practicing. Public speaking is something that people fear more than death. And that's true. But you need to make sure that, the more you practice, the better you're going to get at it. So make sure that that's something that, you're doing many, many times before you deliver the final thing. A rough script can be a tool that you can use to practice. Don't get into the habit where you become rotely saying the script to everyone, but at least getting you used to a framework where you can ad-lib as necessary. And if you have them, gather your supporters to give mock pitches to and see their responses. Make sure that people are involved in this, ensure that they can help shape the story that you tell. Finally, follow-up, which not enough people do. The pitch is essential to capturing them in, but then you need to follow up to kind of seal the deal, if I'll use that capitalist words. Make sure that you have a plan to follow up, and that can look like, phone calls, emails, maybe scheduling a one-on-one with someone in the crowd who really loved your work. Maybe share your email in the slide deck so that people can or share your business card or some way of contacting you with someone that you pitch to. And this is just showing you're committed to making this happen, and that person you feel like is a critical part of making it happen. And so my closing thoughts. Your pitch is essential to building a successful movement. With it, you are working to build the groundwork for the long term, and you're ensuring that this effort is a continued one that will make significant impact. And next lecture is our last. Doing this on the same day, but it will be our last whenever you see it. So we'll be talking about funding. We'll be talking about working around power of different structures, especially in the funding space. And we'll be talking about how you can communicate these practices to other members of your business, your school, your organization, to show why this is an essential skill that everyone should have to do more equity-centered, anti-racist work. So stay tuned. Always contact me if you need anything, and thank you for always joining this lecture, and have a great day.